Greetings, M squared. We're going to do some more composite functions. These ones are a little bit more complicated. You'll notice that this has 3 functions that we're dealing with, so we have to do all 3. And then we have some binomials over here and a coefficient in front of a variable here. So it's a little bit more complicated than the first one we did. Let's get started. Remember, we always want to work from the right in, so we're going to do f first, then we plug that in whatever we get for g of x, and then we go on like that. So from the inside out. So we need to find f of negative 2. Well, f of negative 2 means that whenever we see an x in the f of x function, we take the x out and we replace it or substitute it with a negative 2. So we have negative 2 squared minus 2 times negative 2 minus 3. Well, negative 2 squared is 4. Negative 2 times a negative 2 is also a 4. And then we have a minus 3. So we end up with 5. 4 plus 4 is 8 minus 3 is 5. So now that we know that f of negative 2 is 5, we find g of 5. So we go to the g function, and every time we see an x, we replace it with what we got in the first one. So we're going to say 5 times 5 minus 2. Well, that's 25 minus 2, and 25 minus 2 is 23. So now we take what we got for g of 5 and we put it into the x of the h. So we take our h function, we are finding h of 23. So we say 7 minus 2 times 23. Well, 23 times 2 is 46. 7 minus 46 is a negative 39. So our h of f, let's say that again. Our h of g of f is negative 39. Alrighty, let's try it with a variable that we plug in back in. We're going to find f of h of 2x. So we take our h function, and every time I see an x, I put whatever they tell me to put in. So this time they're telling me instead of just a number to put in a 2x. So I put in a 2x. And then I do 2 times 2x. So I get 7 minus 4x. This is my answer, so now I have to plug this back into the f function, which I could probably have used a little bit more room. So I'm going to square it first. Let's see if I can squeeze it in this little box. And then I'm going to multiply it by 2, and then I'm going to subtract 3, and then I'll have my answer. So a lot of times people forget when you're squaring a binomial that you actually have to use FOIL. So it's this times itself. So sometimes I just scribble out that one and that little squared and write another one, and then it's easier for me to do the FOIL. So 7 times 7 is 49. A negative 4x times 7 is a negative 28x. And then I've got another one of those, so that's another negative 28x. And then a negative 4x times a negative 4x is 16x squared. So that all came from this guy. Now I'm going to do this. Remember, there's a negative there, so I have to distribute that negative 2 into both of those. So negative 2 times 7 is a negative 14. Negative 2 times negative 4x is a positive 8x. And then I just tack on that minus 3. There's nothing to plug in there. So now I want to combine terms. Well, an 8x and a negative 28x makes a negative 20x. Then I combine it with that negative 28x and I actually get a negative 48x. So those are my x's. 16x squared I'll put up front so we can get it in standard form. And then the numbers. So I already took care of that. 49 minus 14 is 35. So that's 35 minus 3, which will bring us a plus 32. So this becomes our answer. So it's a little more challenging. Make sure you're really careful with the signs and the FOIL thing. So that's where you'll make mistakes if you make any. Okay, let's move on to the next one where we have to put a plus 3 into the x of h first. So we take our h function, which is 7 minus 2x, but instead of x, so they're telling us to replace the x with a plus 3. So now I have to distribute. Don't forget you're distributing a negative. When I do, I get 7 from there, and then minus 2a minus 6. Well, when we combine the 7 and the minus 6, we get a 1, so we end up with 1 minus 2a. So then I take that and I plug it in for the x in my g function, my g of x. So now I'm going to say 5 times 1 minus 2a minus 2. And again, I want to distribute. So 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times a negative 2x is a 10, a is a negative 10a. Minus 2, I combine the like terms, I get a 3 minus 10a. Alrighty, last one. We're going to find f of g of n minus 3. So we take our g function and we're going to put n minus 3 into it. So 5 times 3 minus n, I might have said that wrong at first. Let's see, minus 2. 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times n is 5n, so it's a minus 5n. Minus 2, and I can combine these like terms, I get 13 minus 5n. Then I take this and I plug it into the x for f of x. So that means it's squared, minus 2 times it, minus 3. So I'll plug that in for each of those. So 13 minus 5n and 13 minus 5n. Okay, remember that's the squared, so I can just put another one there, 13 minus 5n. 13 times 13 is 169. 5 times 13, I believe that's 60, so we've got a negative 60n, and then another negative 60n. And let me just check that. Why does that seem wrong to me? I think that's 30. I think we're off. There's 65, I believe it is. Yeah. No, yep. Okay, sorry about that. Trying to do things in my head. Okay, 5n times 5n is 25n squared, and then a negative times a negative is a positive, so we get a plus 25n squared. And now we're going to distribute this negative 2, so we get negative 2 times 13, which is negative 26, and then we get a 2 times a 5, a negative times a negative is a positive, so it's plus 10n, and then minus 3. And now we're combining like terms. Well, this is the only n squared, so I have 25n squared. 65 plus 65 is 130, and that's a negative 130, but then I have a plus 10n, so that brings it down to a negative 120n when I get rid of my n's. And then these two are both negative, so I can combine those to get a negative 29, so I'm really subtracting 29 from the 169, which means I get a positive 140. And that, if I did everything correctly, is the correct answer. It gets a little complicated, and you definitely want to use more room than I had available, so it's easier to check your mistakes. But good luck with that. M squared signing out.